My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Having several near-death experiences and one where she was given her last rites at the age of 17 was a wake-up call for my guest this week on Destination Unlimited, Gloria O'Neil-Savage. It opened her to the concept of dimensionality, heaven on earth, and vibrational medicine, as well as other seeds planted in the crossover experience that keep blooming in perfect timing and preparedness. Gloria is a professional singer, associate Polarity Practitioner, and certified educational instructor, Reiki Master, and interior designer. She's also a T.S.H. vibrational healing and total sensory integration instructor and practitioner, as well as a practicing aromatherapist and instructor since 1995 and an astrologer since 1980. Her website is archancient.com, and she joins me this week to share her path and book, Alchemy of the Soul, the Arc of the Ancients. Please join me in welcoming to Destination Unlimited my friend, Gloria O'Neil-Savage. Welcome, Gloria.
Well, hi, Victor. How are you?
Wonderful. How are you?
Well, on this wonderful day over here, overcast in Cleveland, I'm actually doing fairly well. I have a light in the world, and I have someone witnessing the light that is also the light with me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Gloria, congratulations on your book, Alchemy of the Soul, the Arc of the Ancients, being ranked number 8 in Amazon's Miracles and Spirituality group. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm ecstatic. I'm gobsmacked.
And we'll be discussing the book a little later, but let's start with your early path. What was your life like prior to your near-death experience when you were 17, from the standpoint of spirituality and what your aspirations were?
Well, I was a little bit of a different person. So I spent a lot of time alone, in make-believe land, singing and dancing and entertaining. I pretend all kinds of things. I was a priest, I had a shopkeeper, I had so forth. Go down in the park because back then you got out of the house and you didn't come back until the end of the day. And so, of course, I'd be miles away even. But I'd go down to what we call the valley, which is the park down here, and there'd be fairy fields, and there would be these tall light beings would be, tall as trees. And they would stand and be laughing and gesturing with one another, and I would sing and dance with them, and they would love it. And I would bow and everything. So I did that. I told you previously I played chess with my father, which I love. And I like reading and filling my mind with whatever. And luckily we had books at home, so I would digest as much of that information as possible. And of course, we always had the library, and we had library days at school when we had the bookmobile. And I was thinking, just actually today, because I have so many teachers in my life, or people in charge, or administrators, or so forth, and I've been thinking about what's happening with the education system for so long now. And I've written a little bit about that at the end of my book, too, where I think we're going, which is more to a Rudolf Steiner version with using gardens and so forth. And I thought, why don't we have mobile, instead of just a mobile bookstore, which I don't even know if they have that anymore, but mobile classes on a bus. So it would be all set up for whatever class, history, designing, technology, whatever that is. And you could design it to have the kids get right on the bus. And I try not to use the word kid actually because that's a baby goat. And children is a more appropriate term there. So I would do that. And I had some friends to play with. I would make stages in my backyard on our picnic table and put a big curtain up and invite the neighbors over, much to my mother's chagrin, because she would come home to this. And I'd play records and sing. And I'd be singing Aretha Franklin and Sam and Dave and some Barbara Streisand and whatever. And to these adults that I had chairs set up for. So I did that. And sometimes I'd make a little fair back there, like could make fake games and take a bicycle wheel and make it so you could spin it and it would stop. And I think it was the drip from the life game for people to bet on. And I'd buy a great big bag of popcorn at the store and sell cups of that, cups of Kool-Aid. And
So other
I like inventing things.
so other than these
Go ahead.
light beings that you witnessed, you had a fairly normal childhood. Tell us about these light beings.
Well, they're just tall and emanating, uh, like they're like diffusing light, sort of like you see an aura, but stronger than that, more apparent for me to see than that, like steam light coming off of them would be the best way to say it. Where an aura is not so much, it's kind of like steam, but it's not diffusing like that light is.
And
And
what was your understanding as to who they were?
I didn't really have one. All I knew was, in fact, I that's in my book because I said, when are we going to talk about the light being? How come people? And I thought because I was a mischievous child, like not stealing but just creating like what I just told you type of things, or getting kids to go on a adventure and tie our bikes and wagons up together and things like that. That maybe I'm not, or I, believe it or not, I talked a lot. And I would talk in class or not have a lot of patience for people to come up with answers and so forth. So I thought maybe I'm just too bad for them to everybody to talk about it because surely everyone knows about them. I didn't think I was the only one that's seeing them. I
Okay.
just thought people were not allowed to talk about it because
Now,
it was so apparent.
what happened when you were 17 that led to your near-death experience?
So by the time I was 17 in school, I had transferred from Catholic school to a public school. And um, part of the reason was because there were good looking boys that were going down the street. I knew they were going to the public school. If I stayed in the Catholic school, Magnificat, then I would have been, there's no boys. So as silly as the thought is, when you're a teenager, it was foremost in my mind all of a sudden. So I went to a public school and I didn't really know anyone except for a couple other people that left Catholic school. And really I started to get picked on. And it was scary at the time. And so I tried to just start fitting in as best as I could. Instead of getting straight A's, my grades started to suffer. And because I was because I was kind of getting picked on because of getting the answers. And I wanted to be a cool kid. So I started to not get straight A's. And I felt guilty about that with my parents then, who are working so hard, and that now I'm not living up to a different part of my obligation, which is to do the best I can academically and get scholarship and all that kind of stuff. And so I was feeling guilty and worse and worse and worse about myself. And I thought maybe I should just not be here. And eventually I really did get sick. And at the time, I also was working down at Hallie's downtown. I'd go to school in the morning and go to Hallie's at the afternoon. And my ankles started swelling. I mean, my feet were just killing me. And I'd take my high heels off and try to put my feet on a cool floor because they were just on fire and swollen. And but I just kept working. And then I was getting these, which I know are migraines now, but I didn't know that term at the time, really. And I'd have to put my head down because it got so heavy and would be just banging away at me. It's hard to explain. I'm sure a migraine person can tell you. You're blinded. So that was another thing. And then I just couldn't really, got too hard for me to get up. And so I laid in my bed and I was just telling my mom under the covers, I would just say, I'm not really well enough to go to school. I don't feel so good, Mom. And she was busy going to work because my parents owned a store. So I'm okay, but she'd probably bring me some ginger ale or something like that. And my whole body started to swell up and turn green. And then all of my joints were red and inflamed, like purple, like big bruises on my wrists and elbows and ankles and knees, so forth. And my fingers and toes were like balloons. And so I was proceeding to do this every day and telling my mom I still just don't feel so good. And now, as a younger child, I would get bladder infections, and so it was kind of, I would get sick. Um, so it wasn't like completely out of the blue or different for my mom for me to have this getting sick time. And one day I was one of these days I'm in bed and I hear a knock on the back door, and I go to my bedroom. Well, actually, I went to the porch off the bathroom upstairs and looked down, and I saw it's my friend Denise. And I'm like, oh boy. So I put my robe on and managed my way downstairs, which was really difficult. And I open the door and she looks at me and her mouth drops open and she's like, oh my God, what is wrong with you? And so she comes in and we're sitting in the living room and she says, Glow, oh my God, does your mom know? Is your mom seeing you? And I go, not really. I've been kind of hiding under the covers. She goes, well, I'm calling your mom right now at the store. I'm like, no, 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 no. She goes, all right, well, then you call her. I'm like, no, 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 no. Don't bother them because they were busy working. And you didn't like to, I mean, not that my parents were cruel or something. It was just kind of how it was back then. People worked and it was busy and, I didn't want to interrupt them. And the other part of me was kind of ready to just go cross over because it was just so hard to be down here. And other things had happened. Our house was robbed, and I was already having these psychic experiences and hearing things and hearing people's minds and thoughts, and all these things were happening already. And I had no one to talk about that with. And so, and they were actually happening, and they bore themselves out. So anyway, I said, I will tell my mom as soon as she gets home from work. And so I did. I said, Mom, I just really don't feel so good. And I think that, and so she still doesn't see me because I'm covered. And she's not looking at the whites of my eyes, which were completely green. And so she takes me to the emergency room. And the doctor gives me a shot of adrenaline. I said, I just can't stay awake anymore. And everything hurts. And of course, they draw blood and so forth. And so he gives me a shot of adrenaline. He says, I'm going to be back to check on you. And I said, well, can I just lay down here and so he says, yeah. So I fell back asleep. And then he came back in and he says, "Do you feel any more energy? Do you feel less tired?" And I said, "Not really." And he gives me another shot of adrenaline. And he says, "And I'll be back to check on you." And I fell back asleep. And then he came back in. And the third time he gives me the shot of adrenaline, I lied to him and said, "Yes, I'm starting to feel more energy," because I felt bad for my mom waiting for me when she's worked so hard and she needs to get some sleep. And so, my mom took me home then. And then she says, "I think I'm just going to draw you a bath." And I said, "Okay." So she's filling the bathtub up and then she leaves and I get in the bathtub and she opens the door and she comes in and she looks at me and she says, "Oh my God, did that doctor look at you?" And so I'm like nodding, and because I'm barely staying awake. And she goes downstairs, and I hear her on the phone screaming that about the doctor's. He sent me home. I'm taking her back right away. And so she did, and they wheeled me in. And then that's really all I remember until I died and crossed over. And I start in a huge, like Roman type cathedral, like stone marble. And I can't see far back enough to how far back it goes with stadium style seating, but not like cushions and everything, more like stone. And everybody's praying and praying for forgiveness. They're going over their sins. And it's all in the same language, but it's not the language I speak now. And the closest I can come to it is Latin because I took Latin, but it wasn't Latin. And that's what made me become conscious of being in this place was this loud murmuring and praying. And when I looked down, I could see in the center of this oval shaped space, this three beings of light in the center, a very large chair in the middle, and two people standing on either side, but they were light. And then I saw light beings all around that oval praying and in such a state of bliss. Like it was they achieved the highest honor you could put of what you could possibly achieve on the planet, being where they were. And this is hindsight when I come back and think about how that felt and looked at what I was looking at. And then, so I'm continuing to go over my life and ask for forgiveness for like I'm in confession or something, but I'm watching it like a movie, living it. And the next thing I know, it was as if it was my time, and I got sucked into that light. And then everything became this musical light soup, like I was swimming in this light soup. Soup, the word soup's terrible because it's not a very good word. Bath, let's put it that way, a bath of this beautiful, then it was like in every cell of my body, though I don't recall having a body. And all I could hear was this divine emanation singing into every cell, "You are love. I love you. I love you. I love you." And the feeling of that was better than anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I have had some amazing and glorious moments down here. And then I was it was like that time, that cleansing, if you will, that embedding of this bath, bathing everything in me with this light. And it's not like down here either. It's a whole different light. It's an effusive, effervescent light. And then I'm walking. but I call it float walking because it's not like walking with your feet. And it's not like you're walking on the ground, but you're sort of by the ground. And in fact, when I could tell you this too, when I was in that stadium, yeah, everything I'm experiencing sensory wise is not with the senses that we have down here. So it's my third eye, which I know now, I didn't know then. And that has 360 degrees and a circumferential view. And then how you hear is totally clairaudiently, but clear. And so float walking with who I know of is Jesus. And, it's beautiful. There's a garden. What dreams may come kind of comes close to it. As Robin Williams describes things and things change like that, that's how this was. But more real than anything here I've ever experienced. That I can also tell you. And there's a girl, though, a young girl that was painting I found about 10 years ago or so. And she was painting heaven as a child. And I thought, that's very close. And so as we're walking, I now notice there's this long line because we're not, now there's this street, this avenue, all these different buildings and houses. And there's a long line of people going up these stairs into this building. So I'm like, hey, what's going on over there? And Jesus is like, okay, you want to go check it out? Of course, I'm paraphrasing this, but we go over there and I float walk up those stairs and into the building. And there on the cubicle to the side, as I get closer and closer in, further and further in, I know these people more and more intimately. And now there's cousins and so forth until they're my siblings, my sisters and brothers in this room, and my mother, who's completely wrecked. I mean, just like in a place I've never seen her. And my little nephew was probably 3-4 years old at the time, and he was at my oldest sister, Barb, who was just crossed over his knee and said, is asking his mom, what's going on? And she just shaking her head. She's got no words for him. And that's completely unlike that sister Barb is. And so then I'm like, what? So then I float back. We're in the ceiling, up in the ceiling floating. And then I look down and I see this casket. And instantly I'm like, oh no. And I float over there and it's me, and I zoom back to Jesus. And I'm like, oh, you got to get me. You got to get me back. They can't handle this. And he's like, oh, you want to go back? I'm like, oh yeah, I can't leave them like this. And then I became conscious in my, actually the first time was becoming conscious. I started to wake up and my mom was on my arm crying in the bed, in the hospital bed. And I looked up and I saw Happy Days was on. It was 10:30. And I said, Mom, don't worry, I'm going to be okay. Jesus told me I was going to be okay. He's like, oh, even though you're trying to make me feel okay. And then that was it. I went out again.
I'm going to ask you to hold on. At that point, we're going to have to take a
Okay.
quick break. My guest is my dear friend, Gloria O'Neil-Savage. Her book is called Alchemy of the Soul, The Arc of the Ancients. Gloria, please share with our listeners where they can get your book and find out more about you and your amazing story.
Thank you. Well, you can find my book on Amazon right now. It's in both Kindle and hardback version. You can get it there. And I have a website, arcoftheancients.com, ARCOFTHE, ancients, ANCIENTS.com. And also my blog, which is called Waking the Deep, blogspot.com.
We'll be back with more of Gloria after these words on the Om Times Radio Network.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. Om Times Radio. IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On? My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
I always had to be so good, no one could ignore me. Carve my path with data and drive. But some people only see who I am on paper. The paper ceiling. The limitations from degree screens to stereotypes that are holding back over 70 million stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes, rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time for skills to speak for themselves. Find resources for breaking through barriers at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
The more you listen to your kids, the closer you'll be. So we asked kids, what do you want your parents to hear?
I feel sometimes that I'm not listened to. I would just want you to listen to me more often and evaluate situations with me and lead me towards success.
We're not adults, so just be there and like listen. I just want someone to yap to. And I just feel like I'll be fine like if someone just hears me talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
You're doing a really good job. And I don't think I tell you that enough. And I know sometimes we get into it and it's just hard on both of us. But try to understand me more and I'll try to do the same.
Listening is a form of love. Find resources to help you support your kids and their emotional well-being at sounditouttogether.org. That's sounditouttogether.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Pivotal.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is my dear friend Gloria O'Neil-Savage. We're talking about her book, Alchemy of the Soul, The Arc of the Ancients. So at the end of the last segment, you were talking about sort of waking up from this near-death experience, and your mother was there, and then you went back again. What happened?
So then I was running in a jungle, sweating, and I was barefoot. So I was like a native, and this black panther jaguar thing is running after me. And I mean, I'm jumping and running and jumping and running. And this is the part of memory I have of it, because I was so far gone, I had died already. And when I came to consciousness in my body, my spirit had awareness in my body, but my body was like, it was not mine. It was like a tomb. Like I was in a sarcophagus of myself. And I could tell I could hear the priest and the two nuns next to me giving me my last rites. And I could hear my mom crying and trying to keep it together. And I'm trying to open an eye and move something to no, I'm here. I'm not gone. I'm here. And so then I'm out of my body and I'm in the ceiling again. And I'm trying to shake my mom. Mom, I'm here. Mom, I'm not gone. I'm here. And the doctor is I could hear and see the whole thing. The doctor's telling her, I'm sorry, but Mrs. O'Neil, but you're going to have to just make preparations, for your daughter. And, she's just not answering and so forth. And I could see the priest and the two nuns and I could see my body. And so I'm like, oh my God. So I jump back in my body and I push and push and push and push until I get my left eye to open. And they're standing at my left. And they are a bit startled, of course. And they realize, well, I'm here. So then that starts a whole string of events that's happening with the team, the doctors and so forth. And because I've got this green bile coming out my nose, I got it coming out. I have a tube in my mouth. I have a tube out my side. And I start to get sick. So now I'm trying to hold my belly and I'm vomiting this stuff. Sorry to be so graphic. And it's awful because now my belly hurts. And my throat hurts, my nose, because from the tubes and so forth. And they come in, they rush in, and then they rip open my stomach, the stitches, and they stick a turkey baster in there to suck it out. And they have opened me up from the middle of my breast to the top mid part of my hip and cleaned the organs as best as they could, because what had happened was my appendix had ruptured. And that was in my system for like 2 weeks. So they said, she's not going to survive this, previous to this, what I'm telling you. And while I was out. And so, but yeah, I did. That was it. I was in a whole nother place with God and came back to earth again to a lot of pain.
When you returned from this
So that's what happened.
When you returned from this experience, how did it change your understanding of the divine and our relationship with the divine?
Well, I knew that God loved me, and that I just felt God loves everyone. And we just don't have a complete awareness. Something's happened. Not everybody knows this. I didn't even know that part of it at the time. I mean, I knew there were these guides and so forth, but I didn't have this connection that deep to know God the way that happened, that experience created. And it was happy because I thought we never die. There's no death. And we're animating this flesh, our soul and spirit, in this a human body, but that's not who we are. We're just this human body. In fact, I'll just tell you a quick story. Why I was doing yoga on a beach, some 1993, 4, something like that, and I felt myself in final relaxation get popped onto onto this beach like a baby and be born. And I heard the universe speaking to me saying, the poor we will have with us always. You, we will only have this short time. And that's when I had this instant comprehension that what that really means is that we just have this, you've got this life as Victor this time. I've got this life as Gloria this time. And then the I could feel the steam coming off me. And the yoga instructor, Linda, walks around and she looks down. She goes, oh, look, we even have a baby being born. Look at the steam coming off of her. So once again, I'm witnessed. And so that is this life that we have down here, is this short time. We have this incarnation as this person. And we can wake up and remember as much as possible and reconnect to the divine that is within and without.
And what led you to sharing your story in your book, Alchemy of the Soul, The Arc of the Ancients?
Well, that's a great question, Victor. So I closed my shop at the end of September of 2008, because I did my last healing center. And so I had done the astrology and saw that there's going to be this terrible crash, a mortgage crash in particular, in October. And so I negotiated out of my lease with Marty. He was very nice about it and very kind. And the month before. And I came home, and one afternoon, it's sunny and it's nice, and I'm sitting in my yard on my deck, and I'm like, well, this is really nice. I haven't really experienced my own yard in so many years because I'm always working. I was always with the center or the school or the teaching or the clients. And so it was like just kind of bathing in it and basking in this lovely sunny afternoon. And then all of a sudden I felt that presence of Archangel Gabriel, which I now know is Gabriel because I've had these other experiences, saying, you've done a great job and you finished the task that we wanted you to do before. And now we have another task for you. And he said, now is the time to write the book you came here with. And I'm just getting a rush telling you this right now. And so that was it. I began to write that book, but that was 2009. We could see it's taken all this time. And interestingly enough, Pluto went into Capricorn in 2009, and that squared my natal Venus. And it took all this time for Pluto now to go into Aquarius and forming a trine to my natal Venus. And my Venus is in Libra and my Mars is in Gemini. And it is right now forming this grand air trine. And of course, air is communication. And so I find all that, it's just fascinating to live it and to see it and to witness this alchemy, which is what this is. So that's how I started to write the book.
It's interesting that we share the common angelic partner, Gabriel. I have shared this before. When I took my first Reiki class back in the late 1980s, the teacher had instructed us to place our palms over our hearts, close our eyes, and see the first thing that came into our field of vision. I did not have angel consciousness up to that point, at least not in the traditional sense. And immediately I saw what I perceived to be an angel. And the teacher asked us to share what we were seeing, and I said, I'm seeing an angel. And he said, ask the angel its name, and immediately I responded, I heard Gabriel. And that night I went home, and my daughter, who was 13 at the time, said she wanted to try this Reiki stuff that I was learning. And I placed my palms over the back of her head, and she closed her eyes, and she said, Daddy, I see our family members who have passed before. She saw her grandfather and several other people who had passed before she was born. And she said, Daddy, there's an angel flying above them. I said, ask the angel its name, and immediately she responded, Gabriel. So that connection is really wonderful.
Amen to that. Well, of course, that just makes me, it's like I've got pop rocks going off inside me.
Gloria,
in a great, wonderful way.
How did the spirit of Mary
Yes, John.
Magdalene, how did the spirit of Mary Magdalene come into your life?
Well, she's come in different ways. I would say the first, trying to think, really the first time. Chronologically, I may be out of order here, but I would say the one time I was in my second shop, and which was the center, and that's where I started the School for Alternative Health here in Cleveland, and the Polarity School. And I had a landlord that was an attorney. It was he's not on this path like this. And I had to go down to a meeting in Columbus. It's a couple-hour journey. And came back, and we had this big snowstorm here. And so the roof was melting, the water's coming in, it's going into my case, into my computer, into the cash register, things are floating in the display case. And there's a big pocket above dripping, and ends up that the landlord says I should go up and shovel the roof. And I'm like, I'm not going up and shoveling the roof. Well, it ends up being a big fiasco. He comes huffing in. He's an attorney. And he started yelling at us and calling us all kinds of pretty names. And I had 3 customers there at the time as well, at this point. And I said, no, you can leave now because you're not resolving this issue, and you can't be talking to us like this, and we have the right to quiet enjoyment here. And so I don't have to get out of here at all. I don't want to even go into the whole thing, but he ends up hitting my business partner in the face. And so we ended up, we called the police, and they said, we know exactly who you're talking about because, and they describe him, and they tell us that they have to go down to the bank quite often because he's down there raising a ruckus about them cashing a check for him. My godchild, who's crossed over just this past November, sweetheart, had now done a search, which I should have done previous to signing a contract, and found out 3 ex-wives had filed abuse charges on him, and he got away with all of it, being the longtime attorney in Cleveland. And everybody, I thought, we've got to go and file charges against him for this. And everybody advised me no. My mother, my coach, my mom's said, Gloria, you don't want to work this hard for your business and lose it like this. You shouldn't be fighting him. My coach says, don't fight the boys in their own playground, because he's an attorney. So I'm wrestling with all of this, and I'm standing behind my case one day in the store all by myself, and I hear Mary. And Mary says, Gloria, I need you to do this for me. And I said, okay. 11-day trial ensued, and it was god awful. He had taken pictures because I had Reiki symbols and astrology. We had the blending bar with aromatherapy in there, and it was a beautiful place. And he brought all this as evidence that I'm a witch. So the judge ruled that they could say I was a witch because he had this evidence. And so he proceeded to call me that. That's how they addressed me, the witch, for 11 days. At one point, I'm in the hall because they didn't want me in there. And, because he was just trying to give me any which way to go hard time. Because I had refurbished that whole building, brought the bricks walls. We had them sandblasted. I did some of it. My nephew did some of it, a friend of his. And it was gorgeous. Okay. And so I'm in the hall. Down the hall is the security guard, and she's sitting at a desk, and she had her little radio on. And I hear the song come on from the Beatles, Let It Be. But anyway, I found out that these women were coming up to me saying they also rented from him, and they were, they had children, and they were in oftentimes not a good place, and he was abusing them. So they thanked me. They were sitting there giving the judge the finger and saying F you and walking out. It was beyond abominable behavior. But he was found guilty, and he was eventually disbarred. So that was one occasion. Of course, the other one, there's many. One time I was praying about why are there so many autistic children? And what's going on with all these energetic disorders? Because this just isn't right for, lupus and MS and fibromyalgia and autism and so forth. And I hear, Gloria, amygdala, Magdala. And of course, I right away started research. I wrote that down, and I could see Brahma God Allah, my God Allah. And I thought, well, that's in everybody. And that drew me into the whole what the amygdala is, which is an almond shape, almond dorla, and of course, Magdala. And then in gematria, that is the 153 fish in the net, over 265. Which is people know that as the sacred formula of Aristotle's. And then you have that amygdala, which is in the limbic system. Initially, my book was going to be called The Arc of the Ancients, Alchemy of the Soul, the alimbic system. And limbic is your system. We process your memory, emotion, movements, and and fight or flight. And it's more like the old brain with your hippocampus, which translates to seahorse. And then the limbic system, that's how also when you inhale in aromatherapy, which I had taught this over and over and over, in the two bipolar neurons, which goes into your olfactory, which is memory, and it stimulates memory right away. So that's why when I even tell you cut grass or coffee, you can smell both from memory. And so then I had done more research on it and found out how that amygdala had shrunk after the teenage years in autistic children, but had overdeveloped in early years. And so that makes them very oversensitive because it's fight or flight sensation. And so you don't even have to touch some autistic, because there's spectrums of it. Some of these autistic children, they'll feel you before you even get close. And I've communicated and worked with them even telepathically, has worked better because I don't have to go towards them and so forth. I can sit and wait for them. And so anyway, there's many, many studies, and even that was all back in 2009, 2010, whatever it was. And so then I learned, it connected for me that what we've done is been so deleterious to the divine feminine, which is half of who we are. That this imbalance has made both feminine nature and masculine natures unwell down here. So we have these cartoonish, extreme binary versions rather than the celebration of the divine feminine and the divine masculine is something to be grateful for and to create the balance back on this planet that is very imbalanced. And I find that it's interesting too, and I've written about this as well, I don't think in this book, but the polar concept of multipolar, which is what Vladimir Putin is looking for, from our own interpretation of world power and so forth. But it's all the pole and the pole shift and the whole conversation about the poles, the North Pole, the South Pole, the flat Earth, which I'm not advocating at all because I don't believe in that. And I'm fully aware of Eratosthenes, as well as I've been out of the planet itself on several occasions and looked to see the sphere. So I know that that's true, other than a myriad of other things. And to me, the whole flat Earth story is one of those things being pushed to confuse people more and conflate what's true. And the whole idea of a heavenly sphere and Kepler's spheres and so forth, musical spheres, and the idea of roundness and fullness and embodiment is all of that gets polluted in that false story. So that's when I started looking that up and started researching that further and further and further. And I have a lot of notes in the book about what you can look at and people that have done a lot of wonderful research on that.
Tell us about your offerings at Ark of the Ancients.
Offerings at Ark of the Ancients, thank you for asking. So I create a lot of aromatherapy products here. First, to help people sleep, to help with pain. There's the bone lover. There's the muscle leaf for people that work out and just have muscle aches and pains, and that's also real helpful, other than the nutritional aspects that you can always take. I always advocate that first, to help with leg cramps or if you work out a lot and so forth. Then each thing has evolved further for when something wasn't enough for someone. So I've gone all the way up to the Pain Master, both in a roll-on application, which is easy. And that came through actually just out of necessity, the mother of invention, with someone back in 1995 or so. But anyway, and then the creams I make, and they're designed so that they'll cover your surface and they're ready to help absorb, because some create a viscous barrier so that you don't absorb, but you want to absorb the power and the healing of those therapeutic essential oils. So we have that. I have the Wise Woman, which is what Angel Gabriel gave me that formula for when he visited me. I have just many, many royal tea blends and headache relief and breathing for asthma, allergies, colds, flus. In fact, I use that for COVID. I've gotten over pneumonia myself several times because I got pneumonia when I was sick in the hospital and died. So many, many things like that. And that's at www.arkancient.com.
And what would you like readers to take away from Alchemy of the Soul?
I would like to help ignite their own spirit if it's not already. And if it is already, further inflame it so that they, as well as I and you and so many others down here, will help set the world on fire with the Holy Spirit, the fire that does not burn, which is what I believe and know in my heart is what this time is all about.
Beautiful.
And I believe it is not the nice dream that wakes you up, but the nightmare that shakes you wide awake.
Absolutely. My guest, my dear friend, Gloria O'Neil-Savage, her book, Alchemy of the Soul, The Arc of the Ancients. Gloria, one more time, please share with our listeners where they can get your book.
You can get my book on Amazon, and it's in 2 formats. It's in hardback and it's in Kindle right now. And it's Alchemy of the Soul, The Arc of the Ancients by Gloria O'Neil-Savage.
Gloria, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your remarkable and also your heart-opening story.
Yeah, you're so welcome, and thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Victor.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor, the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.